against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
China is developing a social credit system that will control the behavior of all of its citizens. Already, 17.46 million discredited people have been restricted from buying plane tickets, and 5.47 million were restricted from purchasing high-speed train tickets. This system is very similar to what the Bible describes as the mark of the beast. Well, as always, it's somewhat shocking when we see prophecies that are 2,000 years old coming to pass right in front of our eyes. We're going to be talking about one of those developments in this program today. Before we go there, though, I want to talk to you today about something that really shocked me. It takes quite a bit to shock me after I've been dealing with Bible prophecy all these years. But as I read this article, I thought, oh my goodness, look at how close we are. I'll tell you what let's do first. Let's read the scripture that actually talks about the mark of the beast. Sometimes it's good for us to go back to the Bible. It's Revelation chapter number 13, verse 15 through 17. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now this depicts a power in the end time that's going to demand conformity from its citizens. And if you do not conform, you can be put off limits economically or maybe even killed. Let's go now to China. China's social credit system shows its teeth, banning millions from taking flights and trains. Annual report shows the businesses and individuals added to trustworthiness blacklist as use of the government system accelerates. The system aims to pressure citizens to avoid bad behavior, although human rights advocates argue it does not take into account individual circumstances. Now, all this comes from the South China Morning Post on the 19th of this month of February. Let's take a look at some of the things the article says. Human rights advocates, though, worry that the arbitrary system does not take into account individual circumstances and so often unfairly labels individuals and firms as untrustworthy. Now think about this term, untrustworthy. I just read an account just before coming on the air today that Chase Bank here in America is closing out some accounts of some of their conservative customers. They're refusing for them to maintain their accounts there. They may have accounts there that tap into their numbers where people can order things. All that goes down the drain now because Chase Bank doesn't like the conservative stance that people are taking. So don't think, as we go through this Chinese plan, don't think it could not happen to America. Ladies and gentlemen, it could. And we have to really soberly consider it. As soon as you say end time, they say, whoa, the end of the world. When's it going to be? And you can see this mask of fear. I'm not telling you the end time's coming. I'm telling you, you live in it right now. Daniel chapter number 7, verse number 4. The first beast was like a lion. We have the evil news continually to depict the United States of America. You see it on governmental we are the generation for which these that you will not miss one segment of understanding the end time, because I've had many people tell me it's changed their life forever. Many of the major prophecies of the Bible are given to us 2, 3, some of them as high as 4 or 5 times. There is not any chance it's not going to happen, because it's in your Bible, it's prophesied, and the prophecies always come back. When I learned about this social credit list grading all Chinese, and if they don't conform to the proper behavior, I'm going to describe some of the behaviors that can get the Chinese blacklisted right now. And think of it while we're going through in terms of some of the things that the liberal left would like to do to us. You remember back when they attempted to outlaw the selling of soda cups bigger than 12 ounces because they didn't want you drinking too much. They wanted to control how much you drink. Well, that's the kind of thing that's happening in China, only much, much more. Now let's get back into it. Over 3.59 million Chinese enterprises were added to the official creditworthiness blacklist last year, banning them from a series of activities including bidding on projects, accessing security markets, taking part in land auctions, and issuing corporate bonds. According to the 2018 annual report released by the National Public Credit Information Center. So if you get on this blacklist, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself horribly handicapped. Now, what's the goal? The goal is to alter people's behavior because they don't want to get on the blacklist. I mean, who wants to be in a situation where you can't even buy a plane ticket, or you can't even get on a high-speed train to get across the country? Those are some of the results. Consequently, some of this behavior is very detailed. Now, I am positive that if you belong to an underground church in China, you're going to be blacklisted in the worst way. As a matter of fact, you may end up killed. The article goes on to say the center is backed by the National Development and Reform Commission, China's top economic planner, to run the credit rating system. About 17.46 million discredited people were restricted from buying plane tickets, and 5.47 million were restricted from purchasing high-speed train tickets, according to the report. Many people cannot pay their debt because they are too poor, but will be subject to this kind of surveillance and this kind of public shaming, a lawyer said. It violates the rights of human beings. Let me tell you, when you start getting to the point when people, perhaps they're down on their luck, Perhaps they were never taught how to handle money. They get themselves into debt, into some kind of financial trouble, and all of a sudden, everywhere they look, the doors are closed. They're blacklisted. Now, the complicated truth about China's social credit system. The idea for social credit came about back in 2007 with projects announced by the government as an opt-in system in 2014. Now, did you notice the system at first is voluntary? It's opt-in. If you opt in, then you can put your name on this list, and of course you opt in if you think you can qualify, if you think it will enhance your report, either your credit report or your behavior report. Now let's keep on, because I want you to get the big picture of what's going on here. Remember, the Bible prophesies that a time will come just ahead of us when a person, if they do not involve themselves in particular approved behavior, they will be put off limits economically so that they will not be able to buy or sell. I read it to you from the book of Revelation. This was written before there was ever a computer, before there was ever an internet, before such a system was ever possible. But Almighty God foretold it 2,000 years ago. Well, now here in China, we see this social credit system. Let me tell you some more about it. But there's a difference between the official government system and private corporate versions, though the latter's scoring system that includes shopping habits and friendships is often conflated with the former. You mean whoever I'm a friend to could bring my social credit score down? You mean the way I shop could bring the social credit system down? Now, China's social credit system expands that idea to all aspects of life, judging citizens' behavior and trustworthiness. Listen to this. Any of you out there ever been jaywalking? If you're caught jaywalking in China, or if you don't pay a court bill, maybe you've got a parking ticket you didn't pay, if you play your music too loud on the train, you could lose certain rights. It all goes down as a record in your social credit system. For example, some of the rights you could lose would be booking a flight or a train ticket. Now, the idea itself is not a Chinese phenomenon, says Marique Oberg, research associate at the Mercator Institute for China Studies. Nor is the use and abuse of aggregated data for analysis of behavior. But if the Chinese system does come together as envisioned, it would still be something very unique, she says. It's both unique and part of a global trend. Now, that's what makes my hair stand on end, because what China is doing, according to her, is part of a global trend. Now, we right now have seen a huge surge in socialism in America. All this is control, control, control. That's what socialism is. China is a Marxist government. The form of government is socialism. So consequently, they want to control not only what people do, but even what they think. Do you jaywalk? Now, the article goes on to say, unveiled in a 2014 plan, pieces of the system are already in place, and the Chinese government appears to be targeting a 2020 goal to get the rest in place. Though that's less a deadline and instead marks the end of a planning period. Now, Samantha Hoffman, the non-resident fellow at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, has given us this information. The target eventually is that the government system will be countrywide, with businesses giving a unified social credit code and citizens an identity number. Didn't the prophecy say every person would have a number without which they could not buy or sell? Well, this is exactly what they're planning. But don't worry about it. It's not going to be fully implemented until 2020. Now, wait. That's next year, isn't it? Ouch. Now, all of these things, these records, will be linked to your permanent individual record. Now, I'm talking about in China right now. But this idea is spreading around the world. Every person have their particular social score. Apparently, that's already happening with Chase Bank because they already have cut off the accounts of many conservatives. They don't like what they say. We were contacted here at End Time Ministries recently. A lady said, I normally watch you on YouTube, but it came to a certain part of the program and they blanked you out. Well, we've learned that YouTube is now doing that if they think any content is too conservative, that they're now starting to censor that content. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a big battle on our hands, and we cannot lose this battle. Now, this social credit score can range from not paying fines when you're deemed fully able to, misbehaving on a train. What's that mean? Standing up a taxi, you call a taxi, it shows up to get you, and then you're not there. So now they're going to take your social credit score down. Or if you drive through a red light, maybe you thought you were through it on yellow, but you weren't. Private projects such as Sesame Credit, hoover up all sorts of data on its 400 million customers from how much they spend playing video games. Now that's considered a negative behavior. So your social credit score is going to be going down because you're spending too much time playing video games. Or to whether they're a parent. Now you're given some credit because being a parent is considered good. So far, taking part in both the private and government versions is technically voluntary. You remember our income tax was passed as a voluntary tax? True. But don't try not volunteering. Someone will be knocking on your door to make sure you do volunteer. Now, in the future, the official social credit system of China will be mandatory. It's not just going to be China, though, ladies and gentlemen. The Bible says wherever the Antichrist is in control, he will implement this mark of the beast system. Now, the key is control. Why do all governments always want to give all of us a national ID? Because that makes it easy to track us. And the purpose for tracking us is to control our behavior. That's the reason we don't want a national ID here in the United States of America. Now, so far we've stopped it, but there are certain big government people that are pushing. For example, with the real ID that you now have to get on an airplane, keeps on pushing us further and further, more control, more control. Now, Liu Hu is a journalist in China writing about censorship and government corruption. No wonder he's getting in trouble. Because of his work, Liu has been arrested and fined and blacklisted. Liu found he was named on a list of dishonest persons subject to enforcement by the Supreme People's Court as not qualified to buy a plane ticket and banned from traveling some train lines, banned from buying property, banned from taking out a loan. Now, I'm not telling you something that will happen. I'm telling you something that's already happened. This whole system is developing in China, and they hope to have it all encompassing by 2020, by next year. There was no file, no police warrant, no official advance notification. They just cut me off from the things I was once entitled to. What's really scary is there's nothing you can do about it. You can report to no one. You are stuck in the middle of nowhere. Now, the Bible says if you do not pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his government when it comes along, that your access to the economy will be cut off. You'll be stuck with no appeal. Now you're out here frozen out of the economy. That's the way the Antichrist is going to demand obedience to his one world government and his one world religion. Now, in April of 2018, the Civil Aviation Administration of China sent letters to international airlines demanding they show Taiwan as part of China, saying the government would make a record of your company's serious dishonesty and take disciplinary actions for any that didn't comply. They all eventually did. I'm talking about American companies. In other words, if they don't list Taiwan as a province of China, then they're going to be blacklisted by the entire nation of China, 1.4 billion people. Now, watch how this operates. You either conform or you're blacklisted. In the Bible, it says you either conform or you can't buy and sell. That's the same thing as being blacklisted. Now, if you want to look this up, you can look it up on the internet. You can read article after article after article. It's causing quite a furor, and it should. The system used to pressure the airlines was a pilot of the civil aviation industry credit measures, which is part of the official social credit system. Hoffman isn't buying that argument, saying such a system is about government power. If solving problems was the real goal, the CCP would not need a social credit to do it, she says. China's social credit system is a state-driven program designed to do one thing, to uphold and expand the Chinese Communist Party's power. Well, wherever government is, there's always that tendency to want more power, to want more control. We don't want that to happen here in the United States of America. Now, one thing we're doing to keep that from happening, we're sending End Time magazine to every U.S. senator, every U.S. representative, the president, the vice president, every cabinet member, every member of the U.S. Supreme Court, and many religious leaders of our world. We're sending them this magazine because we are addressing the urgent issues of the day. So many things are happening in our world right now that people are wondering what's going on. I would remind you that there are two major prophecies coming at us right now. One is the Sixth Trumpet War. That will be the world's worst ever war. That's the war that's going to kill 1/3 of the human race. And it almost pains me to talk about it, but it is coming. The war is coming, and I've been reading a lot of articles lately because China and the United States are in trade negotiations right now. Now, many times trade policies and trade conflicts degenerate into war because China has been told for several decades that the 21st century would be the Chinese century. Why? Well, because China's economy has been growing by leaps and bounds. They have averaged growing 10% per year for what's it been? Since 1980. So we're talking about for almost 40 years now. Now, America's economy, if we're going to grow 3%, we brag about it because most of the time we've been under 2%. Well, while we've been doing that, China's been growing 10% per year. That's massive when you talk about a country with 1.4 billion people. So what's going on? Well, one thing making that happen is we have been running a deficit, a trade deficit with China over the last many years. And the trade deficit is around $500 billion. That's with a B. That means that we have been purchasing $500 billion more from China than they have from us. How do we do that? We borrow the money. That's the reason our trade deficit keeps going up, up, and up. But while we're borrowing the more money to give to the Chinese, they are growing more and more wealthy, and they're spending their money on military equipment because they believe that the 21st century is to be the Chinese century with its huge population, 4 times the population of the United States of America, and with its tremendous infusion of money because of its huge trade surpluses. China has felt like she will become the most powerful nation on earth. However, President Trump, thinking very soberly, looked at this situation and said, we can't allow this to happen. We cannot allow China to bankrupt America by taking $500 billion of our money every year, more than is returned to us. That is creating an imbalance that we won't be able to correct if we wait much longer. So he said to China, now look, China, we are for fair trade. And that means if we buy your stuff, then you buy our stuff. We've got to balance it out here. Well, now the hard negotiations are in progress. They're going on right now. So that's one thing that could be feeding this tension that is building. The next thing is China is reasserting its control over Taiwan. Now, Taiwan has never been under the control of communist China. Never, ever. The communists took over mainland China in 1949. Mao Zedong and his communist revolution. Chiang Kai-shek fled to the island of Taiwan about 80 miles off the coast of China. The island at that time had been under the Japanese control for the last 50 years. So Chiang Kai-shek took the people that did not want to live under communist tyranny and went to the island of Formosa, which now is called Taiwan. Well, now, the communist China, they've never ceased to say, now look, Taiwan really belongs to us. Someday we've got to finish the revolution and bring Taiwan under the communist Chinese flag. However, Taiwan has prospered in its own might. One report I saw said that they had the 18th largest economy in the world. Now, this is just a small island, and yet the 18th largest in the world? But China has said continually, you must eventually reunite with the mainland. Well, Macau reunited with the mainland, Hong Kong reunited with the mainland, and so they think Taiwan's going to do the same. But Taiwan does not want to live under communist tyranny. So they're holding out. Recently, China's been saying, we reserve the right to use force to reunite Taiwan with the mainland. Also, they forced the United Nations to recognize mainland China, but the only way they could do that was to kick Taiwan out. So way back in, I think it was 1971, we kicked Taiwan out of the United Nations and brought communist China into the United Nations. However, America has a defense treaty with Taiwan that we will always, it's called the Taiwan Relations Act, and we have told them we will always sell you what you need to defend yourself against your enemies, and their main enemy is mainland China. So the Bible prophesies a war is coming that's going to explode and kill 1/3 of mankind. Now, to complicate this situation, President Trump recently has accused Russia of violating the nuclear non-proliferation treaty that was negotiated by Gorbachev and Reagan back 20 years ago. So he's accusing Russia of violating that treaty, plus China didn't sign on to that treaty, so they're not doing what the treaty demands. China's out here to do what she wants to, and Trump says we can't allow that to happen. We're not going to play by the rules if China's not involved. And so consequently, we pulled out of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Now, President Putin of Russia is claiming that Russia has not violated the terms. President Trump says they have been. So the tensions are building there. Now, add to that Iran, because we pulled out of the Iran nuclear treaty, now Iran is starting to test what may be nuclear weapons. They're testing intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach all the way to Israel. They also want to have nuclear weapons, and they recently had war games in the Straits of Hormuz, which is just off the coast of Iran, and they're able to shut that off and block 20% of the world's oil. And then over on the other side are the Gulf of Aden next to Yemen, and they want to have control of that as well because they are sponsoring the Houthis in Yemen. They want them to have control of Yemen. That way they would control both the Strait of Hormuz and also the Gulf of Aden, where 40% of the world's oil passes through every day. All of these factors are boiling right now, and the tensions are building. Is this war going to happen? I hate to tell you, but yes, it is. It's unavoidable. It's prophesied in the Bible. I'm simply telling you that these are some of the conditions that are coming at us at this particular time. Now, in addition to that, President Trump has finished his peace plan for the Middle East, which he has now announced he will release after the Israeli elections on April the 9th. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his longtime lawyer, Jason Greenblatt, are in the Middle East this week, traveling from Arab capital to Arab capital, painting the vision. Look what we will do. You know, President Trump met with Kim Jong-un for their first round of negotiations in Singapore. Well, I've not been to Singapore, but they tell me it's incredibly impressive. A modern, booming, gleaming city. And I'm sure that Trump said to Kim Jong-un, look what North Korea could be if you forget this chasing of nuclear weapons. If you would become part of the community of nations, your nation could have plenty, your people could have plenty. And now this time, he's taken him to Hanoi, Vietnam. And the same thing has happened there. Since peace was made there, Vietnam is booming like crazy. And so Kim Jong-un is traveling to Hanoi, and Trump's going to say, look around here. This is what we would help you build in North Korea if you will just get rid of nuclear weapons. So all of these pressures are involved right now. In the meantime, a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis is being pushed. There is going to be a peace agreement. There's going to be a sixth trumpet war. There is going to be a peace agreement. And when they sign that peace agreement, the final 7 years to the battle of Armageddon will begin. We see the signs of it all around us. They're pushing the peace agreement. They're pushing conditions between China, Russia, the United States of America. So don't go to sleep at the wheel just because it doesn't happen in the next 2 months or 3 or 4. It's getting ready to happen. It's all coming together, and we've got to be ready.